captain's got to be comfortable, right? Done. Don't go halfway. Use heat shrink tubing on your connections under the boat. Part one, we got our steering console all set up. Part two here, we're going to show you how to install this top half onto the bottom half, including how we're going to actually install the bottom half of the steering console. If you like these videos, as always, please subscribe, share them, comment on them, help us out, ask us questions, give us some ideas if there's something you want to see done on a pontoon, a project that you've got coming up. We're happy to help and hopefully can answer some questions for you. This is an inserted, threaded, what do you call it, just a threaded piece. We're going to take these posts, 1/4 inch post, 1/4 threads. We're just going to get that started in there. I put it about 1/4 to 1/3 of the way in. There's one in each corner. There are corresponding holes on the base where these will line up. I'm going to leave this for now, and we're going to head inside the boat to the base. But before we do that, let's look exactly where we want the base to go. Here's our cables for our shift throttle box. That will be mounted right on the railing as opposed to on the console itself. Our base really is going to go up against the seats here. I've got plenty of steering cable. The other factor is just where the cross members line up. So there's a cross member here. So if my console's here, there's a cross member right at the very front of my console, which actually works pretty darn well because I'm going to make my hole for my steering cable as well as my electrical more centered in the console itself. So that makes everything a little bit easier. I've chosen my placement for my console. I've got some space right behind this bench here. And there's a nice little passageway, plenty of room for people to walk, carry things through on the flow of the boat. Because this is a pretty good sized console, which has its perks. It's comfortable. You can have lots of gadgets and fun stuff with it. The downfall, obviously, is traffic flow. On an 8-foot wide deck, you know, it's a little bit on the big side, but that's just, captain's got to be comfortable, right? I like where it lines up with the cross member going kind of right across the front of it. You've got 4 beefy bag, I couldn't chew through it. 4 beefy stainless screws. We're gonna go ahead and just put one in each corner. And I do personally, because I'm doing this for other people and I don't know how they're gonna use their boat, so I do add in at least 2, typically 2, stainless bolts that are bolted through the deck with some nice big fender washers on it. I think that helps, just knowing that if somebody leans on it or falls against it, it's not going anywhere. But for now, these nice big stainless screws, we're going to put one in each corner just to hold our position so we can cut our hole and everything. When we're looking at where to cut our hole, I like to know my pontoon is about typically 24 to 26 inches coming inboard from the edge. I could go dead center. It's kind of an X of embedded. I like to have my hole, part of my hole at least, cut into that, because if water gets in here, guess what? It's going to fall into these lower sections. It's going to move around and eventually find its way out. I do always use a rigging grommet when I go through here too, just to keep water from splashing up. I'm going to run my steering cable up through that, as well as my electrical. If you're running a binnacle mount control box, typically for me, I'm going to put a separate hole in forward over, because that's where that binnacle mount would be on your console. I'm going to run a separate hole for that, usually for the shift throttle cables, and then potentially some electronics or electrical wiring that comes with that. I've got my boot, my steering cable, and electrical run through. There are little holes. These are where those studs that we did, they're going to insert into these holes. River's excited. His mom just got back. I find that it doesn't always line up perfect. It's kind of hard to get your hand in there, or a screwdriver or anything. So I take that hole from about a 3/8 inch hole and I just make it a 1/2 inch. The way that we're going to make it work is just by adding a big flat washer to the whole system. So I'm going to go ahead and knock out those 4 corners. It just makes it easy waiting to put that top on until you've pulled your electrical up. Just access to everything else is so much easier. I can lay in here and reach up, and I'll have to do that as we pull more electrical and play around with switches and the stereo, but I like getting it to this point, then putting the top on. I'm going to line up my corners, drop that into position. That looks good. There is that stud. You'll see another one up in that corner, and then there's one in the other two corners. And what I'm going to do is run a flat washer, then the lock washer, and then the wing nut on there, and that'll hold everything in place. We'll do that to the other three, and then we'll be good to go. If you look at the back of this boat, there are not going to be any seats back here, so I don't really have a choice except to put speakers in the console. But I've stenciled out my circle, going to cut with my Dremel and make this into a speaker hole, and then we'll move on to what's next. If it's a matter of putting a speaker right here or on the seat right across from it, put it in the console. Shorter run for the speaker wire, less draw on power, better sound. If it works well to put it in the console, put the speaker in the console. It's going to still give you great sound, still going to give you a great time on the boat. But this is getting 4 speakers, plenty loud, no amp needed. That's the world I live in. No amps, no subwoofers. There's obviously car stereo places that can do a great job for that too on your boat. So look into that. Ready for some sound. I'm going to put the front speaker in too, and then we'll get to the windshield, and then we're getting pretty close to being wrapped up with this one. For the windshield, there's little dimples already molded into the console, so pay attention to those. They're right here. So there's 4 of them, and they correspond to where the screws go through the windshield. The way that the windshield's set up is these holes are kind of tapered. They get smaller as they go, so these little screws will get stuck in them. Now, you just have to be careful when you're tightening them to just get them started, get everything snug, and that's it, because if you're not careful, you could drive it right through. That took a whole 1 minute. 4 screws, go gentle or put them in by hand. Just get it snug. It's not going anywhere. I have a lot of work left to do underneath in terms of actually hooking everything up. The cool part, this wiring harness, this is my navigation lights, docking lights, accessory, live well, horn, all of that. It has my power and my ground run from the batteries. This just plugs right in to that 7-switch panel. I mean, not even joking. You line it up, done. Now I hook power to my battery and back after I've wired everything, spliced everything in. Don't go halfway. Use heat shrink tubing on your connections under the boat. Electrical is done for that switch panel. How cool is that? We're gonna kind of jump ahead though, and I'm gonna show you how to install this cover, that big panel. Just fits right in here. You've got 3 set screws. Now these are plastic, okay? It's a 1/4 20 bolt, but it's plastic. So if you broke it, you could put a 1/4 20 with a washer, you'd be fine. So you're just gonna be gentle with them. Work the cover to where it lines up better, but then you can just thread them on in gently. This is another bolt you never want to break. That's how we get everything situated. Cover's on now. Easily removable if I have to get back underneath and change anything. We've got a speaker in the side and in the front. Lays out nice. Little removable cup holder will go here, just to give that something to, you can have an armrest there essentially. That's done. Windshield's on, steering wheel's on. That's my stereo wire.